Of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. DPadgett from Tennessee State University, and the topic is the African American and the census of 2000. And of course, Dr. Padgett, during this last segment, let's give you an opportunity to give our audience some trends and some developments in reference to the Census 2000, and we'll then end this show for today. Talk about some of the trends and some of the developments.
Okay, well, one of the more interesting trends that we're starting to see is a reversal of the Great Migration. You know, during the Great Migration that began pretty much right after the Civil War, blacks, for a variety of obvious reasons, wanted to get out of the South. And so every year since then, we've seen this trend of blacks moving out of the South until the 1990 census. So now we're starting to see what's called the Back South movement. It's going to be very interesting to see whether that trend is going to continue. I mean, generally the migration trend in the U.S. is urban to urban, but now we see African Americans, instead of moving from Birmingham to Detroit, moving from Detroit to Atlanta, or moving from Chicago to Charlotte, or moving from New York to Tampa. And so that's going to be very interesting. It's going to have a lot of impacts upon voter redistricting. It's going to have a lot of impacts upon commerce. I'm working on a major project right now where we're looking at how African Americans determine their urban quality of life versus white Americans. I mean, these other, you know, you see these magazines, Best Places to Live in America, or Money Magazine does its Best Places, but usually the demographics of those surveys do not match those. There's not a lot of black participation, and so I'm working right now on a major project where we're looking at, you know, what draws African Americans to urban areas, and I have a sense now that some of the amenities, the climate, the job opportunities that we see here in the South are drawing a lot of African Americans back to the South, and so it's going to have a great impact upon, you know, job recruitment, you know, attracting people to different areas, and it's going to have, you know, a significant impact. And that's one of the most significant trends that I've seen here.
Now, this reversal of the Great Migration, in a real sense, back now it's now coming back to the South. Now, you said that that was first identified in the census of 1990.
Yeah, we first started to see it in 1990. Some of the places that people can actually get a hold of these data are on the internet. One source is the Population Reference Bureau. That's www.prb.com. And so you can go there and get tons of data. Or you can go to the census site, which is www.census.gov, G-O-V, and you can go there and get all of these reports on population trends and changes, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very, very serious field with regard to business. There's a publication called American Demographics, where they do extensive demographic studies on African Americans to determine when African Americans are going to buy certain types of products and where these African Americans live. I mean, there's a whole science behind using census data and ethnicity to sell people stuff. And it's very complex. I mean, they can predict where a woman living in a certain city of a certain age will buy a certain color car or a certain color pair of shoes. It's down to that level. And so even without realizing it, the census is being used to influence us to make purchases. All these data that we provide voluntarily to the census are used to predict our behavior with regard to purchasing. And so, you know, we should be at least aware of that. And it shouldn't dissuade us from participating. Some people might say, well, I don't want to give these people all my information because they're going to use it to sell me stuff. But if we don't participate, then we'll once again be locked out of the voter participation. And so we've seen, we've lost at least 1 or 2 congressional seats as a direct result of the undercount or lack of participation of African Americans in the census, specifically in Georgia and Louisiana.
And since I think over the last minute and a half we have here, Dr. Padgett, let me raise this question. Since I think you've indicated that African Americans have been undercounted, what can you say to them over the last minute and a half that we have of the importance of their participation in the census count? I know this count has passed, but make some statements in reference to that.
Well, really, this last census enumeration is over with now, but what's happening now and what's going to be happening all year is that there's going to be a significant political battle over making certain that that undercount is adjusted for. And there are statistical ways to adjust for the undercount so that we make sure that the official count is closer to reality and wipes out the undercount. Because, you know, if we don't do that, then it's going to have an impact upon all aspects of our lives. It's going to have an impact upon federal funding for public transportation, and we know who uses public transportation. If there's an undercount of blacks, those funds won't be made available, and we will continue to be underserved in Los Angeles, Atlanta, and other large cities as far as public transportation is concerned. And that's directly tied to the census. You know?
And so what you're doing, Dr. Padgett, as you've indicated, is very, very important in terms of giving us a view not only of the population itself, the number of people, but in terms of the way that resources within the United States are used and can be used for the benefit of African Americans and other groups with the count.
Yes, federal dollars and the allocation of those dollars are directly tied to the census count.
Very good. And Dr. Padgett, over the last 5 or 6 seconds that we have here, let me thank you for coming by and giving us that excellent information today on African Americans and the census. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments.